intelligence officials to say and do when it comes to the Russia investigation? Did it cross an ethical line? These are questions they would not answer in public hearings, but they have now discussed behind closed doors with congressional investigators and the team of special counsel Robert Mueller. CNN's Dana Bash has been working her sources, the Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats and NSA Chief Admiral Mike Rogers. What do they say?
Well, John, what we gathered from these sources is the first glimpse of what two top intelligence chiefs said behind closed doors, as you mentioned, to not just Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller's team, but also to members of the Senate Intelligence Committee in separate meetings last week. Now, multiple sources are telling me and our colleagues Evan Perez and Manu Raju that Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats and National Security Agency Director Admiral Mike Rogers said that President Trump suggested that they say publicly there was no collusion between his campaign and the Russians in these closed-door meetings with special prosecutors, at least the team, and the Senate Intelligence Committee. Both intel chiefs described these interactions with the president about the Russia investigation as odd and uncomfortable, but they also said they don't believe that the president gave them orders to intervene in the investigation. Now, you mentioned that public testimony earlier this month. Both Coats and Rogers said at the time they never felt pressured, but it got pretty contentious because they also wouldn't offer specifics about their interactions with the president until they went into classified settings, which is what we are reporting first about this morning. Now, we should also say that the fact that the president had these conversations at all about the Russia probe with these two gentlemen was initially reported last month by the Washington Post. Now, one of the multiple Democratic and Republican sources we talked to for the story told us that both Rogers and Coats reported to members of the Intelligence Committee that Trump wanted them to specifically say what then FBI Director James Comey had told the president privately, that he was not under investigation for collusion. But neither thought that the president was asking them whether it was that or about collusion in general with the campaign. They didn't think that he was asking them to do anything that was improper, that they thought that it was just a suggestion. They didn't act on it also. Now, ultimately, it will be up to Robert Mueller and his team to decide whether these revelations are relevant to the investigation. We should also say CNN reached out to the White House, to the DNI, to the NSA, and Mueller's office. They all declined to comment.
So, Dan, as you noted, both Dan Coats and Mike Rogers, the Admiral, were reluctant to testify about this in an open setting. Why?
Well, according to one congressional source I spoke with, Coats and Rogers asked before that public hearing for guidance from the White House on whether the president would claim executive privilege, which would mean that they couldn't tell Congress about the conversations. They didn't get an answer before their testimony, so they weren't sure what to say, and it ended with that awkward and really contentious hearing. We are told both men were much more forthcoming in private with both the special prosecutor's team and with the Senate.
Interesting. By not answering, maybe the administration or the White House got what it wanted, which was no answers in a public setting there. Former FBI Director James Comey, he famously now documented his conversations with the president in memos. Did either Dan Coats or Mike Rogers do the same?
The answer is yes when it comes to Rogers. He had this interaction with the president and documented it in a memo written by his deputy at the NSA, Richard Leggett. And one congressional source who I spoke with who has seen the memo said it was not like the Comey memos. It is only one page and doesn't offer many of the details of the conversation. But this memo does document it and makes clear that Rogers thought it was out of the ordinary. As for Coats, John, he did not document the conversation he had with the president, as far as the people who I've spoken to who were briefed by him were told.
All right, Dana, stick around. A lot more to discuss. Another big story happening right where you are in Washington just minutes from now. Senate Republicans will file into a closed-door briefing what is in their own health care bill. Then we, the American people, get to find out. CNN's MJ Lee and the rest of the CNN political team have dug up the details of what is inside that bill. MJ, what are we learning?
Well, John, you know that the big question as we were waiting for this mystery bill to come out was whether the bill would appeal to conservatives or moderates. And turns out the answer is